Officially?
Officially? We're officially open? We're up for business?
That's up to you.
All right, I think we should officially be open. Okay. All right, so we need to talk about our December meeting. We have an issue where we either have two meetings or try to combine the 3rd to the 10th. Because we had a problem with, because of Veterans Day, getting the notices in the paper, correct, Maren?
Correct.
Timely basis. So we changed the meeting to the 10th if everyone can make the 10th. And try to do away with the 3rd, right?
Yeah, if you want to try to stick with one meeting.
So.
Well, and then the other thing to remember is currently there is no time frame to open and hold a public hearing on new applications, given the current state of emergency. All time frames are suspended. So we don't have to bend over backwards to get the discussion started on any of these. The expectation of the applicants is that we'll get going on them.
I would like to do one meeting. I don't care if it's the 3rd or the 10th. If it's more accommodating to try to get everybody, I have no problem with doing it on the 10th. Delisa, what do you think about that?
No, I mean, that's fine. I told Maren, initially I thought, oh, let's just do 2 because one long meeting, just people get exhausted and cranky, but I'm fine with either one, whatever.
Soon not that bad. What do you think, Jeff?
I'm open.
Okay.
I mean, the long meetings are a pain, but so are 2 meetings. I don't know.
Guys, we used to go until midnight in the old days. You guys are wusses.
Yeah, we're just
go to 12 o'clock. Yeah.
That's when your hair wasn't gray.
Yeah.
No, that's what made it gray.
And all the decisions that were made after 10:30 were wonderful decisions.
Oh yeah, we're at our best.
Life's too short.
Mm.
So what do we decide on? One long meeting on what day?
We'll leave it up to Maren and let her surprise us. If you want to do one long meeting, I'm good. If you want to do 2, I don't care. I'd rather do 1 though. If I had my preference, I'd rather.
Okay.
All right. It is December. I can't believe we're talking about Christmas already.
Oh.
Yeah. So anyway, all right. Well, Jerry, why don't we start? Can we get Anna? Anna's probably watching silently, laughing at us. Can we get Anna to come in, or is she there already, Maren?
I don't see her here yet.
All right. You want to send her?
Yeah.
We'll start. We'll do Hager, and then we'll come back if we can get a quorum. It's not going to be that long anyway. So if Jerry jumps in, great. If not, maybe we can have Anna stay in and she can do it for necessity. How's that, Chris?
I don't know.
No.
You were right.
What? Oh, Anna. Oh, yeah. Okay, so we have a quorum for the Hager for the final draft of the conditions of approval for Hager. We have 4 here.
And Mark, just to clarify, we're going to skip over 22 King Street for the moment.
Until hopefully Jerry will show up at some point.
Correct.
So we might as well start with Hager, and then we'll come back to that if we see Jerry on the screen. So let's getting back to Hager then. We have Bruce here, I see. Diane's here.
Matthew's here.
Okay. So we have a draft that Myron put together and Chris tweaked a little bit. So we want to talk about the conditions of approval for Hager. I'll start off with Anna because probably easiest to start there. You'll probably catch everything all the comments we have, Anna. You're probably just going to roll them into yours, right?
I don't know about that, but thank you.
So Maren provided everyone a copy of the email that I sent out with some of the comments. So I guess I'll just start. We'll start on page 1. So I did go through, and I agree that all the comments that Chris Heath made were good. So thank you, Chris, for your time on doing that.
Thank you.
So page 2, under the project description, the word independent for independent living units. I think that because there was some confusion around whether or not these were actually independent units, I'm a little reluctant to put that in there just because this could potentially be precedent setting, for example, that this now becomes the standard for what an independent living unit means. But clearly, I know I don't think that. So I was hoping to strike that word and just leave it as living units.
I don't see your concern. I think they're in the context of senior housing, they're trying to it's trying to distinguish between, you know, a project that has on-site assistance versus not. That's how I read the independent.
I sort of agree with Anna. I don't think it really fits as truly what we're going to talk about it after this meeting about our senior bylaw with Chris a little later on, but I think it barely scratches what independent living really is. So I know we want to approve it and everything else. I think we should probably go along with it, but I think in the future, we're going to do something to define independent living a little stronger. How's that? Better way to put it.
I'm good with that.
Just so I can be clear on something, I want to make certain that we're looking at the latest draft that you guys are looking at when I'm trying to follow you along here. Maren, the copy that you sent me that I forwarded around, I think yesterday, the day before?
No, you had been working off a different version. So this one is posted to the website.
Okay. I'll go grab it.
It has Chris's corrections. Corrections.
Yeah.
So I think from our perspective, the independent living units need to stay in the project description. The projects qualified under independent living units, and I think Chris had provided a memo very early on confirming that the type and the use that was proposed meets the current definition. I suspect your conversation later this evening has to do with that definition, but the project today meets that definition, and I think the use of it in the project description is appropriate. Certainly, you have counsel on the line who can weigh in.
So I'm a little confused. If this is a decision, I guess I didn't think that the applicants were providing any other input or opinion.
Actually, Anna's correct on that. We're deliberating the decision ourselves. That's a good point. Like I said earlier, I think I agree. We'll leave the decision, the independent living in there, and we're going to speak about it after this to tighten up what we really feel independent living is. So,
Okay. Yeah,
I think we
good,
should
as
move
long
on
as
from
we can
that.
look at. Yep. All right. Thank you. So on page 3, under public hearing, it has the term age targeted. And I didn't know if that was because that was originally what the hearing notice said, because I think the more appropriate term is age restricted to 55 and older as identified on page 7, number 9. So age targeted is my question.
So the age targeted wording comes from the bylaw.
Okay, so that's in the bylaw. All right.
Even though we are restricting it, it's going to be an over 55 community, correct? There is no ambiguity on that part, right?
Right. The conditions include a simple age restriction.
Okay, all right. I see Jerry's joined us. Welcome, Jerry.
Thank you.
Anything else, Anna?
Yeah, so on page 4, number 8, how much over the 2,500 square foot impervious are we talking about?
So the change in the impervious cover is about 20,000 square feet total. So
Okay,
from existing to proposed, it ends up at just about 7% impervious over the whole site.
okay. All right, that just wasn't quite so clear, so. Is the CR submitted?
No, I didn't anticipate a draft CR yet. We do have the reference to a plan reference for it.
So that's going to be negotiated between town council and Matthew, right? It's gonna,
Well,
and
the
Bruce.
CR will be accepted by the town, so Conservation Commission and Conservation Administrator is working on that as well.
Okay. So it'll be to our approval, correct?
Well, and there are 2 different deadlines for when the CR would be done. Have a draft CR, I believe, prior to first building permit, final CR prior to last or 20th occupancy permit.
Okay.
So that does, I mean, so effectively, if this decision is finished today, then that just gets added on? I'm just not clear, given the fact that we could be voting on this decision tonight.
Well, we are voting on this decision tonight, and the proponent and town council and conservation will word it so that everybody agrees to it, and then it'll be added to our decision.
Okay, all right, thank you. I think there was a question on page 6 about the sewer being addressed, and sorry, I don't have that language right in front of me.
In the version I have on item 4 has blanks for acres.
Yep, the acreage is 12.9 something.
4.5.
Okay, it's just over 12 acres, and I do have the plan reference from the engineer.
And then for number 5, I think that was the other one that related to the sewer system. So I think what's in there covers it. I think that's what Tom had addressed as well. All right, on page 7, number 10, regarding the table of affordable units, I would just like to hear from the other board members about unit number 5 on there, which is the 1-bedroom at 120% AMI, because I thought that we had requested to change that to 100% AMI. And I would just like to hear from the others what they think about that.
Since I did it, isn't that the one I took the 20 out of and put it to the
Right,
60? Yeah,
that's what I remember.
right.
And
Yeah, and after Anna raised the question, I did go back to the tape and reviewed it several times. And Jeff, if you remember, right before the vote, you and Mark went through the different affordability, and this is the way I have it drafted is my understanding of what you
Finally
voted.
decided.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Well,
It was
I did go back to the
last-minute
tape.
horse trading thing.
Right.
I guess
As 120, it's not 100.
Your first proposal, Mark, was at 100. By the time it got to the vote, there had been quite a bit of discussion, and it was at 120.
Okay, well, if it's on the tape, it's on the tape, so. Okay.
And I think
I
Anna's
have
question is whether that's what you intended.
Well, I know that I discussed taking that 120 and dropping it down to 100 to get 60. So, I don't know how the rest of the board feels about it.
But you have a 2-bedroom at 100.
There's like four units at 100, I think is how it
There's
goes.
4 units at 120.
2 at 100.
Yeah, wasn't it supposed to be? There it is. 1 bedroom, 1 bedroom, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom. So 2 at 100 and 4 at 120. I thought the next one at 120 was. I always thought it was going to be 100. I thought it was 3 and 3. That's how I remembered. But if Jeff and I talked about it at the very end, he got it, left it at 120, and that's what we voted. Then I guess we got to leave it there. So, Myron, if you're saying that's correct, then
Jerry or Delisa, any comment?
Jerry, you have any?
That's what we voted on. That's what we voted on.
Okay.
Comment on what? That's what the record shows, right?
Correct.
That's what Myron says. Okay, well,
So be it.
then I say we leave it in. If that's what the record shows, we'll leave it as written. Okay. Anna, you have anything else?
Yes, so on page 7, number 10. So all the units are going through the lottery process?
I thought we just had to do the lower ones at a lottery, And
It says the 60% and 80% shall be sold through a fair housing lottery process. The 100% and 120% may be sold by conventional means. Check to see if this is what the planning board wanted. How are conventional means going to assess the qualifications for these affordability units?
By
I
the
thought
time,
someone's supposed to go to Littleton residents. If you do lottery, you
Right.
not put them out.
but by the time you get to condition 12, that outlines how the process would work for sale of the 100 and 120% units. So it would be affirmative fair housing marketing, and then planning board verification of an income limit. And then there's a question whether or not the town would also set an asset limit on the 100 and 120% units.
So while the first two, the 60% and 80%, is a lottery process, the other ones will still have affordability, but it won't be through a lottery.
That's what the applicant is
So
proposing.
someone shows up and says, gee, I'd really like this. And then there's an assessment based on this.
Whether they can afford
DC, whether they qualify for that affordability.
I thought we had a percentage of 60% of this is Littleton residents. Isn't that how we finally decided it? 60% to Littleton residents?
Okay, so you would, we should add some wording on local preference.
Well, I mean, what would that sound like? You hold it out for local. So what if you don't get anybody local? What happens?
Then it opens up after that.
Then it opens up. So we do have the 60% in there.
I don't.
Nope.
No.
No,
No,
you
we
don't.
But didn't we talk about that? 60% was going to be.
I don't remember this.
I recall we did talk about a percentage. I can't remember if it was 60, but we did
Mhm.
talk about it.
Yeah.
And you're
there was
talking about 60% of the affordable units?
Right, it would be 6 of them.
Okay.
So do we want to put in their little local preference first, and then whatever happens.
Is that also
So-
something that Chris would take a look at to finesse the language on that?
Do
Is that possible to have a local preference when they're in a lottery?
Yes.
Typically with a 40B, and I think this is probably equally true here, you need to, well, I guess I'm not sure if it is true here. Normally, you need to make a showing to DHCD that the local preference is needed, that there's sufficient demand, and a couple other criteria. So you have to basically prove your case in order to get permission to have a local preference, but you would include it as a first step. You would include it in the permit itself.
Yep, and that's the process we just went through for the Jones Meadow, where one of the 2 units was a local preference.
Okay, so we'll put the 60 in, and then leave the lottery for the first 2 affordables, and then preference and.
Well, I'm still confused. How will those 2 be sold? Kind of on a first come, first served basis?
I think it's going to have to be. How are we doing the other ones? We did Cooper. Yeah,
It's a
right?
lottery process.
Yeah, it's a lottery process.
Well, but they did them all lottery process, which, it was just 2 of them. But so in this case, the others, well, let me back up. So the 60 and the 80 will be at a typical lottery process. But the 100s and the 120s, how will those be sold if they're not at lottery?
It's a first come, first serve.
A Littleton preference first.
Okay.
But
Okay.
they still have to meet the standard.
Right, and usually what the town would do is set a time frame, working with the developer, set a time frame. If there are no qualified applicants within the first X months, then you're
Then
open
all bets
to
are off.
non-residents. Well, recalling that local preference means live in Littleton, work in Littleton, or have students attending Littleton schools.
Okay. We can rely on you and Chris to get that straightened out. Anything else, Anna?
Yes. Also on that page, number 7. So let me find it. Also under number 10, last paragraph talks about the 150% homes, the process for sale, 150% units also going to be first come, first serve with the same, or not with the same stipulation.
Local preference? I
But
think,
when we're saying local preference, is it, I know it's 60%, is it 60% of the first one sold, or is it 60% of the lower income? What is it 60% of?
I would say it's 60% of the affordable. So those 150s are still considered affordable. So 60%. If we get to 60, then those are fair, open up to anyone. If we don't get to 60, they're still offered to local preference first. And if no one takes them in that certain time frame, then they're open up to whoever.
Well, I mean, you're referring to the language that says they will not be required perpetual deed restrictions.
Yes.
Yes,
Process for sale of up to 150%.
right.
So what are you asking? I'm not sure what the
So
question.
first of all, my question is, why do we not deed restrict the 150% units?
Or if you recall the discussion, that was the proposal from the developer, when they noted that if that many units were deed restricted, would have difficulty getting financing.
And we agreed not to do it for the last 2. Okay. That was the condition. Even though they're going to be affordable, we agreed not to put any restrictions on the last 2 for their financing.
I think they should be included in the local preference.
I don't have a problem with that, but I don't think they need to be deed restricted. We'll put them in. If we don't get up to 60, they should be offered at the local preference. And then,
Wait, how long do they remain 150% AMI then if they're not deed restricted?
If they're not deed restricted, it would only be for the first sale from the developer to the first buyer, and any resale after that would be.
So what does that have to do with financing? I don't understand that.
Yeah, my concern is actually that those will get immediately purchased and then flipped. So how do we keep that from happening so that they somehow stay at 150% AMI?
I don't know if the numbers would work out that way.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, that is an issue, which is why I want to include them in the local preference. So a local person would have that opportunity to,
Well, wait a minute. I thought the whole purpose of being affordable was to keep them affordable. If you're saying you can flip it after the first purchase, then what's the point? I don't get it.
So it's not unusual, well, or what a lot of towns used to do would be a shorter term deed restriction for affordability. Littleton, we learned our lesson to do perpetual on those that qualify for the subsidized housing inventory. So we don't have to worry about them falling off the subsidized housing inventory in 20 years or 30 years.
I mean, I don't recall this part of the conversation, but I still fail to understand why financing would have anything to do with it, especially if it's a for sale. Like, what do you care? What does the bank care?
Can I speak? Is it okay to speak?
sure.
Yeah.
It's pre-sale driven. We can't pre-sell them and have those contribute to the pre-sale requirements of the construction lender. And that's why when we presented at the last meeting, we were really upfront saying we can add these 2 additional units to meet your 10, but in doing so, we can't have perpetual deed restrictions on them. We can price them and sell them at the 150% level, but we need to be able to transact on them early and upfront so we can get the pre-sale requirements from the construction lender.
Chris, can we put a shorter restriction on them, maybe a couple of years, so they don't flip, so it doesn't get flipped, but they're still, we could put a couple of years, right?
Legally, sure. I mean, we can impose a 5-year, 10-year perpetual. That's up to you guys.
I like the 10-year. I'm good with 10.
Does that work with the financing restriction? I mean, if
No, it
that's
shouldn't, because once they sell it, right?
No. He said it was all pre-sale. It was a pre-sale
correct.
financing issue. It had nothing to do with length of perpetuity.
No, so it wouldn't be it would be deed restricted, but it wouldn't affect them in their purchasing. They could at the price. And then whoever buys them has to understand that there's the restriction as to what they can sell them for.
Is that how that works?
Chris? Yes, that's how it works, right, Chris?
I gotta confess that I don't have a good understanding of why this complicates the financing. I trust the developer that it does, but I'm only speaking to whether we can impose a 5-year, 10-year, or perpetual deed restriction. Which
Well, let me answer my point of view. If I don't understand it, then I don't trust it. Well, I mean, if you can't explain it in simple English, then I can't. Then how can I possibly understand it, and how could that actually be true? So I mean, you got to be able to
explain.
Explain.
This is
So when they presented it to us, they presented that they wanted to be able to pre-sell it, just like he said, for their construction loan. So even if we're at 150, they could still pre-sell it, but there'll be a condition that it can't be. There is a percentage that they could sell it after, even if it's affordable. It does go up through the state, right? There's an escalation through the state, correct?
as long as AMI goes up, yes.
Yeah, as long as everything goes up, it goes up. Why don't we cap it and say 5, 8 years, something like that, that it has to stay it has to stay at an affordable price. Then after that, it can. That way they can still pre-sell it. It's still, we have some sort of protection that it's not going to get bought and flipped. And that event, and hopefully Littleton residents will have an opportunity to buy it. And it gives them what they want. It gives us 8 or 10 years, whatever number, between 5 and 10 you want to pick. And whoever buys it has to know that there's a restriction on it as to how much they can profit from buying an affordable unit.
Does anybody else on this board understand what you just said? Because
I did.
Yeah, we're going to cap it, Jerry. Jerry, how hard is it? We're going to cap it that for 5 years or 8 years?
10 years.
What does that have to do with pre-sale? I still don't get that.
It has nothing to do with pre-sale. They just want to put it in there that they can pre-sell it, and it's an affordable unit at 150 AMI.
So are you going to allow us to sell the affordable, the 250% affordable units in pre-sale? That's the question.
Correct.
Yeah, why? Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Why not?
And we don't want them to turn around, somebody scoop them up and then turn around and sell them 6 months later. So we'll put a restriction as to how long the affordability aspect of it will stay in those. The other ones are all deed restricted. These are not. So we'll put 5 to 10 years to let the board decide what number they want to put in there. It won't affect your pre-sales, and we'll still have some sort of protection that it's still, the 150s are going to stay affordable.
What's the difference between 10 years and perpetuity?
Well, no, you can't do perpetuity.
Why?
I wouldn't go any more than 10. I'd go, let's say 10 years.
I still don't get it.
It was
You
part of
can't-
what we discussed and negotiated.
It was part of what we discussed originally.
Yeah, may I speak? So pre-sale means that we will execute a purchase and sale before the construction of these units begins.
Mhm.
And so just so I want to make sure the board understand, that's what we mean, that we would sell the unit before we even started breaking ground at all. You know,
That part I understand. I get that.
okay.
I just don't understand why you can't do that if it's restricted in perpetuity.
When it's,
Well, what happens with the local preference and the marketing process? I mean, I think it's a timing issue. What we were trying to accomplish was to sell 2 units at 150% of AMI, so that there were 2 units affordable to potential buyers for the project in order to satisfy the condition. But if these units are going to be restricted from sale until we go through a local preference process, go through a DHCD process, and have to qualify for the marketing process that you have later outlined in this document, then the timing is not going to work out. We're going to effectively be in a position where we have to capitalize and finance the project before we get through the administrative process attributed to the affordable restrictions in this document. And that's ultimately the issue.
Okay, so that really has nothing to do with the deed restriction. You just don't want to have to go through the local preference.
Well, it's not the local preference, it's the administrative process that comes with what you're asking for, and it's lining up the timing so that we can facilitate sufficient pre-sales to bring construction financing to the project.
So
and
if
the
we
issue
said,
we have is that it is a specialized project, and so the
Yeah.
lenders are looking for an exceptionally high amount of pre-sales. And when we offered the 10 units, and when I think this was voted upon, I think we were really clear that these 2 units couldn't be restricted in the same way as the other units. And we were willing to sell them at the 150% AMI price, but we can't be in a position where we're handcuffed and unable to cause for pre-sales because we have to go through the local preference process, we have to go through the DHCD fair market process, and everything else that goes with it.
all right, so wait, so that now we're getting closer. So you're saying that if we deed restrict it in perpetuity, you have to go through that process. But if we make it 10 years or 20 years, you don't have to go through that process. Is that what you're saying?
I don't understand what you're asking, Jerry. I'm sorry.
We're talking about putting like a 10-year restriction on it, right? That has to stay at 150.
Yep.
So how is, I don't get, is 10 an arbitrary number versus perpetuity? Why does perpetuity mean?
Oh, I'm sorry. I understand your question now. No, the issue is the construction lenders are concerned with the high quantity of affordable units on the project. And when you restrict them or you cause for deed restriction to be put in place, they don't give us credit for them. If they ever had to step into the project and foreclose, they can't immediately liquidate that inventory. They feel that there's a challenge selling those units, that they have to go through a subset process. So for us, we have to show them a certain amount of income or revenue driven by units that aren't restricted in the ways that you have, both administratively as well as with deed restrictions. The issue we're bumping into here is that the percentage of revenue associated with the project and affordable inventory exceeds the construction loan amount when you add those 2 units with deed restrictions as well as with the administrative restrictions. that are included in paragraphs.
Again, I'm just going back to whether it's perpetuity or 10 years or 20 years or 15 minutes, what's the difference as far as triggering the requirement? Doesn't it just mean any restriction you would have to go through that process?
If it's 150 AMI, don't they have to qualify for it? And
That's what I'm
it's,
saying. Like, what does it matter?
they still have to go through the process to qualify for a unit at 150 AMI anyway. They have to go through all of that anyway. The only difference is a time frame put on their deed that says that they can't turn around and sell it for more money than they paid for it, or a percentage more, whatever the state says they're allowed to sell it at, what profit they're allowed to sell it at. All we're doing is capping the fact that it's going to stay affordable for an X amount of time. They still have to go through the permitting process to be qualified for 150 anyway. So
I know, but that's what I'm saying.
For our lender, this is a substantial issue. We've had conversations with them. We've discussed the level of affordability, and we've discussed the restrictions, and we came back with what we could make work with our construction lender.
Yeah, but even
Mr. Chair.
And it was voted upon at the last meeting. I mean, that's what we discussed. That's all, a combination of all of this is why we were able to give a 60% unit. It's why we were able to offer 8 units plus 2. I mean, that the retrade on these 2 units has a substantial impact to our ability to obtain the financing.
well, see, I don't get.
Okay, but that's not that. We didn't discuss it at that level in the last meeting.
No, we never
I
did.
mean, this is a much more wholesome disclosure of information. So, I mean, to me, this is almost new information.
And that is something that we're not supposed to be doing. And if I may please point out to the board, this is precisely why I did not want to close the hearing last time. And so here we are. And so we need to make the decision right now as to what to do with this.
That's what I'm saying. The question is now, do you even care about the 150? I mean, if we're gonna take, basically what we're saying is we're putting window dressing on 150. We're not going to put a restriction on it. So does it even matter at that point? I mean, I'll be honest with you. I don't feel like we should be discounting a property to allow someone to just go and flip it. That just seems like a bad use of a rule.
Look, I still want to restrict it if the rest of the board says so, because it is our decision tonight.
I don't understand. I'll pipe it. I don't understand how, if whoever say I want to buy one of those units at 150, I still have to go through all the criteria with the state to be able to afford the 150 AMI. And that doesn't change. Whoever you sell it to still has to qualify. They have income levels have to be such, how much they have in the bank. Everything still has to be such for 150. We're not changing that. No matter who you sell it to, whether we deed restricted or not, still has to do that. The issue is whether or not after they buy it, there's going to be a restriction on their deed that says they can't sell it for X amount more than what they paid for it. It has nothing to do with your lending, has nothing to do with financing, because they're still going to pay whatever the 150 is, whether it's 389 or 420, whatever that number is. They're still going to pay that, and they're still going to have to qualify through the state guidelines to do that.
I guess, Mark, what I'm saying is it sounds like the lender has this requirement. The lender.
Well, why does the lender care?
That's what I'm saying. Why are we even weighing a decision based on the requirements of a lender? That's not even I don't even know how that even comes into this.
The co-housing is a special kind of development. It's not a standard development that you've been dealing with every other project. And across the country, the issue with the lending on it is a different type of lending. So now we're at a situation where they're trying to have 75% pre-sale, and they can't get to that because we have more units restricted as affordable. When we worked out the deal beforehand to get 10 units, we agreed that 8 would have the restriction be listed and 2 would be in the conditions that they would be sold for that rate. Now you're telling us that our prices are too high. How the hell, if their prices are too high, how are we going to be able to just flip them?
I'm not saying that at all. I want you to explain to me what type of lending it is, since you brought it up. So we're not
telling you the price is too high. All we're saying is that once somebody buys it, there's going to be a restriction on it that they cannot sell it at a profit above what any of the other units would sell for. Anybody else that goes into those other 8 units has a formula as to how much they can profit from selling that unit. We're not stopping you from selling it at 150. We're just saying that those 2 units are going to be governed by the same regulations that everybody else who buys the other units are when they go to resale. That's all we're talking about. And whether we put a couple of year restriction on it or leave them like the other ones that are in perpetuity, that's the issue. That's the only issue. Everybody else who buys the other units can buy them and sell them tomorrow. We just want to make sure that when they sell it, those 2 at 150 are going to be sold at the same percentage that the other ones were. That's all we're trying to protect.
Mark, that does not track with verbal
Right.
representation for rationale that was not
Right.
given. Just given.
So
It does not
it's-
track with that at all.
Right.
So what are you saying? My point is, does 150 even matter?
Right, because 150 is still a fair amount of money. It's not like they're that discounted that much. So we're not.
Why? What I'm saying is, why advantage a buyer if it can just go away? They're not really affordable. So why even put them in there? Let's just strike them from the decision.
Just leave 2 at 150 and they can do whatever they want.
No, why are we even complicating this? I mean, if they have a condition on the 2 units and we're going to basically say, hey, you can flip them, doesn't sound like putting 10 years or 5 years or perpetuity even alleviates the lender problem. They have a problem with pre-sale, and yeah, it's going to complicate a pre-sale. So I'm not even sure where the perpetuity language actually comes from. That's why I'm confused. Like, what do you care? You wouldn't be able to pre-sale it anyways. Could you?
Chris, you wanna?
I guess two quick comments. One, I guess I don't understand the applicant to necessarily be balking at the 150 or deed restricting it necessarily, but more at the level of administrative review that would need to go into place in order to get those deed restrictions in place in the first place.
I'm saying.
And as the decision was the current draft of the decision didn't really have much review of how these things get sold at 150 in the first place. It, I think, to some extent, left that to the applicant to figure out. Conditions 11 and 12 both deal in some detail with how we sell the 60 and the 80 and the 100 and the 120, but it didn't really address the 150. So I don't know if there's some creative way to restrict it, but streamline the process to do that. Maybe like take it out of DHCD's hands, no state level review. We oversee their buyer somehow. I don't know. I'm thinking off the top of my head.
If we don't have a solution for this, then are we really going to decide then?
Well, I don't have a solution to suggest tonight. We can think about it, but I was not ready to solve this problem tonight.
Chris, let me ask you this: do you see it as a problem? How's that? I'll dump it right on your lap.
My job is to make sure the decision captures what you, the planning board, want to do here. So I think the original draft of the decision said they got to sell it at 150 the first time, and after that, whatever. If the board wants to keep that restriction in place on resales going forward for years after that, I think that's a perfectly legitimate goal, and I can draft the decision accordingly. We're hearing from the applicant that presents a problem, but again, this is up to the board. So that's comment number one. Comment number two, and I hate to do this, is I had a prior obligation coming up just in a few minutes, so I'm going to need to.
All right. So
call momentarily.
All right.
I can continue to. I will watch the tape and do whatever it is you guys decide. But
well, the intent of how we did close it and how we did draft it was to have minimal stay in the 150. I think Jerry makes a good point. The 150 really isn't that big a deal off of what the market price is going to be. Do we really want to? Do we really care? Why don't we just move on from this and just?
So the what was cared about at the meeting was that 10 affordable units out of 24 looks better than 8 affordable units out of
Correct.
24. So there was, since this is the first project under this particular bylaw, it was felt there was some value in at least encumbering more units with something. I sort of agree with you about the 150. I'm wondering if even at 150, if it's going to be much of a, discount. But there's the other issue about local preference, and if the applicant may want to take those two out of local preference to solve their paperwork problem. But I don't have a problem with, sort of carving these out and making them a different, instead of perpetuity, 5 or 10 years. Flipping does bug me. I don't know if there's going to be this issue or not because of the prices.
The 60% local preference will still be on these, because if they're going to sell them right off the bat, they haven't met their 60%. These are going to be part of what one of the first ones marketed, and we're hoping that 60% local preference. So I don't think that's off the table.
No. I'm saying just local preference of the two.
Yeah,
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
They're going to try to sell them right off the bat. So we're asking them to get to 60%. If these are the first two they sell,
I got you. Okay.
for them. All right. So it's still going to be there, and it's still going to be offered to the local residents first. I think we're probably.
I think that's just not. This doesn't track, Mark. I mean, it's like you're just basically effectively letting them take them off the table, anyways.
Yep.
So why are we even playing games with it? They're either affordable or they're not.
Right.
They're 150.
If they're not affordable, let's just take them off the table and stop complicating the decision. Otherwise, we go back and say, make them affordable. If the lender can't handle it, so be it.
They are affordable. They're at 150. They're at one.
Not in perpetuity, Mark. That means they can be flipped. And whether you put 5 years or 10 years or 25 years, it doesn't matter. It
I
means
don't have a problem with setting a limit for 10 years. So that's just my opinion.
yeah, I mean, exactly. Where is the limit?
10
Like, what's a
years.
good number? How do you even determine one?
Well,
I think we owe it to our community to try to do as best as possible out of this bylaw, given what has already been provided to us as information. And the fact remains that if we could do this in perpetuity, then I think we should do it in perpetuity. If we can't, because we want to be accommodating, and that's what we are being, is accommodating to this applicant, then we need to put some kind of a time restriction on it. I'm not okay with just letting it go. I think that's a slap in the face.
okay.
So let's put the 10-year on it
Okay.
and just
10
be
years.
done with
Jeff,
it.
are you good with 10 years?
Fine.
Jerry?
I mean, in principle, not really, but not going to break the bank either.
Okay. Anna?
Yes.
All right. So we'll do the 150s. We'll put a 10-year restriction on the resale of it. And we'll hope that 60% of it stays as local preference. And let's move on.
Good.
Okay.
Thank
So-
you.
Thank you. I'm going to move on to 2 items from the peer review. And that is item number 14 about not disturbing the no disturbance area. Is there a way to condition that so that if it does happen, there are consequences to it?
That's the
The 50-foot no disturb areas, Conservation Commission, I would recommend that the planning board not step into their jurisdiction, into their,
so they're the watchdogs of it. So
And
Okay.
they're able to fine and put sanctions.
yeah.
yeah.
Okay, good. Number 65 in the peer review, if we're not going to require the applicant to to make the sidewalk ADA compliant, then what is the applicant going to be required to do so that somebody who is perhaps disabled has to get out of the building? How are they going to deal with that? So what are your thoughts on that?
Okay, that comment was not the very latest on the ADA review.
Okay.
The engineers did go back and forth on it. Some spot grades were added to clarify the design.
Okay. So it will now be ADA compliant.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Great. All right. Continue to move forward. So there are some conditions that were in other senior residential developments that if we're going to be consistent about the way that we do our work, I think that I wanted to ask about these. The first one is around guarantees and why there are no guarantees in this decision as there are with others.
The only other one there was a guarantee was where it was a definitive subdivision, and the definitive subdivision process allows for bonds, allows for guarantees.
Okay, thank you. And then the SWPPP requiring that particular plan.
Yeah, the Conservation Commission requires it in this case.
Okay.
The state,
So why is it that we had it in our previous decisions?
For either of those decisions, the Conservation Commission was not involved. There were no wetlands.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Conveyance of the open space to the town is not clear. Is that going to be in the CR or what?
There's no conveyance of the property. There's a CR that will be held by the town.
So I guess I really must have missed the party because I thought that there was discussion that the town would take over that piece of the development, that would be granted to the town.
They had decided they wanted to keep it put in a conservation trust with the state owning the property. It's going to be a homeowners association agreement. That's how they left it.
Right, and that way the homeowners association is responsible for the ongoing maintenance.
But it will be open to the public. It will be open to
The
And
trail
who's
will
going to
be
maintain
open.
the trails and all that?
Pardon?
And who's going to maintain the trails then?
the association.
part of their responsibility to maintain the trails is they own it.
Mhm.
Wow, it's a lot on those folks who are going to own them. All right. In terms of the cottages, I would recommend putting in a prohibition of expansion of livable space.
And by cottages, you mean the,
The 1-story,
Yeah,
the attached ones.
yes.
That would be like if it's a 40B, that's sort of assumed, but that's a good question. That's a good question.
Well, we did it in Jones just because we wanted to try to maintain the notion that these truly are senior residential homes and not homes to be expanded by another 1,000 square feet. So that was purpose for putting that in. And I think that that's reasonable for the individual units, not in the big long one.
okay, that can, yeah, we can add that.
Okay. And then we had
Maren, a question on that. When we talk about expanding livable space, does that also include like covered porches that have been made weatherproof and insulated, et cetera?
Yes, that's livable space.
Because, at Jones Meadow, that's what has happened.
What's happening?
They've
Yeah.
added on.
Right, there is a limit of the maximum livable space.
Right, okay.
Right.
I'm just looking for clarification here because at Jones Meadow, the same restrictions were put in place.
Right,
And yet
and some of the units were constructed smaller than the maximum allowed.
So the ones that now have the covered porches on the back, that's because the actual unit was made smaller?
You're here asking me a zoning enforcement question that I have nothing to do with.
No,
so,
what I'm trying to do is,
I understand the question.
Yeah.
For that particular case, if you have a question, let's work with the building department on that.
okay,
But livable space,
is any additional space,
indoor space,
indoor space, okay.
right? And you have this site plan to enforce any changes outside.
Okay,
Thank you. And then my last comment is around special permit lapsing within 24 months. I think that that's also somewhat standard. So I'd like to add that.
Okay, yep, that's state law.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Good.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Does
you, Anna.
anyone else have any other questions or concerns? Lisa? No. Jeff?
No.
Jerry?
No.
Okay, then I'm going to make a motion that we approve it with the conditions that we have and the additions that we put on it.
I'll second.
Second. All those in favor, Jeff?
Aye.
Elisa?
aye.
Jerry?
Aye.
Anna?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. So, okay. So
Thank you.
you're going to just change it all, Myron, run it by Chris real quick, and we'll sign it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, so
Everybody.
we have to go back to our 6:30 meeting. Are they still around, Myron, or did they? 22.
Yeah, they're still here, Michael.
We're still here.
Yeah.
Good evening.
Sorry about that, guys, but
No worries. Very interesting.
thank you. Do we have any, board have any last input before we have the conditions of approval? Do we have any questions on it? No? Delisa, do you have any questions or concerns? Jeff?
No.
Jerry?
No.
No. I don't have any concerns. Myron did a good job on it. Everything's as it should be. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the conditions of approval for 22 King Street.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Jeff?
Aye.
Delisa?
Aye.
Jerry?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Sorry it took us so long,
No
gentlemen.
worries.
That's quite all right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
evening.
All right. So now we have one more last bit of business we want to talk about, our senior residential bylaw that we just got done with. Ann, are you back? Maybe it'd be better if you kept her muted. Oh, I didn't say that.
Whoa.
I
That's,
didn't say that. I didn't
I
say
heard that.
that.
That's very
Slipped out.
That's going to cost you.
That slipped out. I'm sorry. I can't believe I said that. Anyway.
Yeah.
So
Whatever.
we want to talk about it, and Hager is a great example of. First of all, we want to talk about what independent living is. That was one of the hangups of this whole thing. So I think Anna, you want to talk about trying to change amend our bylaw for Springtown meeting. And I think Mara and I were talking about before the meeting started, and I think a great place to start would be to get Chris to agree to tweak it for us, what we should put in for independent living.
I'd like to hear what people think that means. I mean, to me, it means it's an apartment.
Well, no, it's supposed to have some sort of services that go with it. An apartment doesn't have any services. We've had people a while ago, a couple of years ago, propose an apartment complex and wanted to put vending machines in there so that people who live there could get food. That's not what independent living is. Independent living is a stage of aging in place. That's what we originally started this whole thing with Judy Barrett. We talked about people in Littleton being able to age in place. Start in an apartment, then go to something that's independent, which means there is some sort of services if you need them. You need somebody that, if you can't cook for yourself, or you need somebody to help you on a limited basis. It's not nursing home facility. It's the next step before nursing home.
I thought that was called assisted living.
Yeah, we do have a definition for independent living. It's multifamily buildings in a senior residential development that are designed and intended for occupancy primarily by people age 55 years and over, with units that include some basic services such as meals, housekeeping, grounds, maintenance, security, and common areas and common facilities for events and activities benefiting residents of the development.
Okay.
That's not an apartment.
Yeah, well, wait a minute. It says such as, and then there's a list.
Right.
So
Right, so I think we need to
leaves
be more
that
definitive.
discretionary to the board, what you want in the list.
We do need to be more definitive if we want more than that, because that's part of what the situation was in this previous applicant, was that the loose definition that we have, they feel that they met, and as a result, that took more time to get through. So Maren, that definition that you read is our definition in our bylaw, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So then if we wanted to add anything more to it, to strengthen it, what would that look like? I think it was probably the bigger question, is how do we amend the definition so that it is not too vague?
Well, let's take a pause on that, because you said a lot. So you started with the preface that we should change it because it was hard to get through the last decision. I'm not sure I agree with that as a basis to changing that definition.
So
I think that the last Hager Homestead is that it meets almost all the definitions of independent living that we have in our bylaw.
I agree.
What's the difference between independent living and an apartment building? That's what it basically boils down to.
Okay, I just have a problem with, I understand you're talking about independent living in the context of senior housing.
Correct.
But independent living is independent living, and that's, to me, it's confusing.
I agree.
well, and that's what we want to do is get away from the confusing part of it. As an example, we have an uncle who lives down in sunny Arizona, and his independent living unit allows him to be able to have meals. So in other words, it's not so much a function of, there's going to be a get together at the common house every third Friday, but rather every single day there are meals that he can choose to go and eat, or he can go out.
Because Laura's mother is in, but it's called assisted living. She has a dining room she can go to. She has her own apartment. So I'm confused because you're talking about a facility. You're talking about a facility.
Yeah.
That's different than setting aside housing options for seniors.
Well, then you should.
Yeah, we do also have the definition of assisted living residence.
Okay.
Assisted living residence is a long-term senior residential facility that provides personal care support services such as meals, medication management, bathing, dressing, and transportation, principally for people age 55 years and over, and certified by the Massachusetts Office of Elder Affairs.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe independent living unit is based off of the services that are offered, such as the meals, and maybe it doesn't include the medical portion of it.
That's exactly the difference. You're not depending upon somebody to dress you, to bathe you, to give you your medication. What you are dependent upon is if you're incapable of cooking, or you don't have a vehicle and you need transportation someplace else. That's the bare bones what independent living should be. Assisted living is an entirely different animal. Assisted living is one step before you go to a nursing home, where it's they're doing everything. So
you're basically talking about it like it's a Courtyard Marriott. That's essentially what you just described.
Well, not necessarily. No one cooks in a Courtyard.
Yes, they do. Yeah, you can have a stove, refrigerator, and then you can go downstairs for meals. And if you want to get a shuttle service to the office, no problem. That's exactly what they provide.
Okay, then that's what we want. We want to marry it. Okay.
They may have a product for that.
They do. They have one in Westboro. They've got one all over the country.
No. But for seniors, I mean, they have products for everything.
Everything.
I think that's a Homewood Suites, not a Courtyard by Marriott. But Homewood Suites does have that, where you're right. They have a meal menu when you walk in. You can go downstairs and eat their soup and salad, or you can go out to eat at the place across the street.
So I have another example of Laura's father who lives in, these are both people who are almost 90. He lives in an apartment complex. It's an over 55 apartment complex. However, it has common rooms, common kitchens. It has gym, sauna, hair cutting, and it serves breakfast in the morning to the whole community. And how would that fall under this? Would that be called independent living or just an apartment complex?
See, I would say that would be independent living.
Okay.
I think
it was more than just breakfast, but at least meals are provided. And I'm sure that one there, if you wanted lunch or dinner, they would probably provide that as well, right, Jeff?
I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, because to have a restaurant operation, that's a big deal.
Well, that's the difference.
And you're not going to get that. You're not going to get affordability in a facility that requires meal service. That's crazy.
You're going to lose the marketability of this. You're going to make it too restrictive.
No, it's going to be, we were hoping for something bigger than 24 units. We were hoping for a facility that had different levels of service. That's what we put it in there.
Okay.
You got to remember, you're getting a higher density. You're getting 20 units per acre for that.
We're putting in an affordability restriction that's far and above any other affordability on the books. Like, you're talking starting at 50%, and now you want to burden an applicant with providing meal services, which is exceedingly expensive.
Well, no, I actually disagree. I don't think it's burdening them at all. In fact, what I think then is, so don't build that. Don't build out the kitchen to be able to provide the meals. Then just make it apartments, make it rental units. Don't try to squeeze
I
it.
thought that's what they were.
That's fine. Yeah.
Is that what they are? Wait, are you saying that the units don't have kitchens in them?
No. The units have kitchens in them. I'm saying if there isn't a master kitchen restaurant type to be
You
able
have to
to
have a
serve
staffed
females.
kitchen. That's what you're saying. In your definition, it must be a staffed kitchen.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
exceedingly expensive.
Right. And that's why they're so rare, right? They are rare to have those kind of independent living
Yeah,
units.
because nobody can afford to build them and staff them. Like, now
Exactly. So therefore, that's one of the reasons why I never thought that this was a true independent living unit situation. So in my mind, I see rental units, okay, which is what I think Hager was, and I think that the next step up is independent living units, but they are very defined based on the Homewood Suite example, right? You have your cleaning services, you have your meal services.
I know, but I'm saying you're going to price everybody out of affordability. I mean, no one can afford to pay that.
We're not going to, we put 50 in there at our discretion. We wanted something over 25, but I agree with Jerry. We're never going to get to 50, but we're going to get something over 25. We just didn't want the bare minimum that everybody else was doing.
He's only 20%, Mark. You're starting at 25.
Well,
and you need about 200 units just to support a 40B. So, I mean.
So, hey, Jerry, can I share something? And Maren probably has even more detail to be able to share from the other day, the Affordable Housing Trust meeting, where information was provided that in Littleton, I believe the number is 29% of residents earn less than $40,000 a year.
Yep.
So if we think about it from that perspective, and the AMI for that is less than 60% AMI,
yep.
What we need in Littleton, at least for the next, probably decade or two, is smaller units that can be affordable. And if they're going to be affordable, you're absolutely right, Jerry. I don't think we're talking about independent living units. We're talking about rental units that can be lived in by our own Littleton residents who are in that low, that lower income bracket.
So do you want to rip that independent living language out?
That might be an option.
Apartments.
That might be an option. Yeah.
We could just say apartments, not independent living. So we can have assisted living, garden style apartments, and cottage.
Since it was confusing to the applicant, maybe it should be recategorized.
Yeah. Yeah, let's take out the term independent living and just relabel it.
Unless you want to set up a different, for these different types of senior housing, different sticks, like if it's an independent living thing, maybe the affordability requirement reduces. If it's not, maybe it's higher, or, if you want to make these definitions and want to then sort of decide how to differentiate them in their affordability requirement also.
Yeah.
So I think that if we can discuss this from not just the nuts and bolts of what the language is, but also from the bigger picture of what is it that we want to accomplish with the senior residential bylaw and with affordability, we want to be able to meet the needs of our Littleton residents. And in order to do that, based on the data that we're seeing, it will require us to have smaller, more affordable units than we've ever seen here before.
Well, wait. Go to where's the density chart? I mean, right now, right, for independent living, you're given something like 8 or 12 units per acre.
20 units.
Per acre.
20.
Yeah. So that would now be apartments. I mean, that's some pretty.
No, but for apartments, would you up that? 30 units an acre?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're still going to be upward limited by like septic and all that kind of stuff. Even if there was sewer, you still can't.
Yeah.
I mean, and you have a height governance, right? So you have 2.5 story. So you're going to have some scaling issues if
you have 2.5 story in the village overlay district, but not otherwise.
You do in the bylaw.
In the bylaw,
in which bylaw?
The senior housing bylaw has
the senior housing bylaw. Okay.
Yeah, 2.5 story.
I mean but I'm saying for if you want to get these apartments that are affordable, maybe that changes. Maybe you can go up to 4 stories. I mean, 15 Great Road is 4 stories.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, why not? Yeah. Why not remove the restriction if you want to get that kind of density in for seniors? That's totally doable. But you're not going to do it with 2.5 stories.
That's what we want. We want smaller units. We're willing to give a higher density.
And more height.
Yeah, more height. Yeah.
So let's change it. Let's make them 3 story and say we can do that with that density.
I mean, we're talking about elevators, and elevators are cheaper the more stops they have, and
you have a 55-foot height restriction on the what we call independent living. So, Jeff,
really?
help me out. 55 feet is.
Well, that's 5 stories, 4 or 5 stories. Yeah.
Yeah.
Depending on the roof system. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, cool.
So if you want to try to attract like this super affordable thing, then that's, I think, what we should do rather than focusing on the definition. Well, you can focus on the definition, but instead of parsing it out, I think it should just give more to people who want to do this, to enable to make them cheaper. And Anna, I just want to say, some years ago, I was at a housing study session, and you're right. It was sort of shocking to me. They said that there were about 20% of Littleton seniors that live on Social Security. And that's really surprising. 20% of the total population of Littleton. Yeah. That was really surprising. So anyway.
You know what? Maybe we should.
I guess my question though is, if we're going to do this, right, do we have to think about like where we want to target? Because if you're going to allow like a 55-story building, shouldn't that be more in the urbanized areas? And you don't want someone
or in an area that that is not doesn't have
like little
No,
stations.
Little houses right
Yes,
next door. Yeah.
I'm trying to get that in, but
Yeah, no, I'm on board. I just don't want to see somebody show up, but in somebody's neighborhood on a 4-acre site and put, 70, 80, 90 units.
why don't
Right
we
now-
wait till we see what happens with Littleton Station before we start diving into this? We have the consultant working on it. We are looking for senior housing up there. We're looking for apartments. We're looking for a little bit of both. Maybe we should let them have a whack at it.
Well, because TDR could play nicely with this.
Mhm.
Mhm.
You could dump
Very
a
much so.
ton of density into something like
I can't drive around town without looking at parcels going, ooh, that's a TDR. Things
Yeah,
that you wouldn't think
exactly.
about,
Like that could be nice.
Yep. That is
Okay.
very exciting. And I think in terms of the places that the master plan has said are appropriate for development would be all around the train station area, possibly the Point, because of the height for these. The Common is already set at 2.5 stories because that's what residents said they wanted in that area, but it leaves those other 2 areas right for being able to build higher.
So why don't we leave this for that? And by the way, I did reach out to Sam Park to ask him if he would come before us at his convenience to talk about mixed use up at the Point, to see if we can talk him into some housing up there. So he
Was he
did
amenable or what was
for us. So I'll try to nail him down maybe right after Christmas or something like that to get out there, get to one of our meetings and at least talk about it. Does
Yeah.
that
So
make sense?
I gotta go now.
I guess based on this conversation, then it sounds like we're saying that the term independent living units may very well need to be scratched from our bylaw. And if that's something that Chris can take a look at as to the consequences of that, what are we missing if we were to do that? Is that the direction that it seems like we're moving?
You mean the label?
Yeah.
Why don't we see what,
Yeah.
why don't
I'm always hesitant at removing options from the bylaw. If we want to add senior apartment or some definition like that, I would love to add that. I'm a little afraid to take away one of the options in case that's what some developer is looking to do.
That's a great.
Obviously, it's up to you guys how to address it for sure, but
why don't we wait till the Dodge and Flinker or whatever their names are, come back with what the 40R was going to look at.
Yeah.
At the Point, that'll give us some guidance because that'll have independent and assisted and everything. We're hoping.
When will that happen?
They're gonna come back with a. They've already done a build. We've already been talking about build out and what we want out there. Delisa next December. We might have something from them by December. Is that?
Yeah, that's what Maren, we don't have a date yet. We need to, I sent you an email today asking about that.
yeah, no, we set the December meeting, but we won't have the January. We should have quite a bit of information for January.
When's our December meeting?
I thought you decided you were going to do it the same day as the planning board meeting, do that afternoon.
I don't know. All right.
Yeah. So we're going to meet on
Yeah,
the 10th.
so
I gotta
it'll
go.
be a little while before we get that.
Okay, well, if that's the case, then we may not be able to make it in time to make a change for this, but if we wanted to wait for that.
Well, I think we're going to meet on the. Are we meeting on the 10th of December? Is that what we're doing?
Jerry's here now. We can finish that conversation.
Are we?
It was two
Well-
small meetings or one big meeting.
2 small ones.
Ooh,
I vote for one big one.
I vote for one big one.
I do too.
Yeah, see, I was with Jerry. I'm like 2 small ones.
It's a swing vote, Jeff. Swing. Let's go.
But the small ones always become big ones.
Yeah. So it's too
no,
big.
we put a clock on it. 45 minutes. Put a sticky up on.
Yeah, it's the case. Mm,
I don't care.
I don't care.
I don't care.
Anyways, I gotta go.
All right, real quick. The final piece of this is tonight, as you could tell, we were having some discussion about the 150% AMI. Do we want to do anything else with that range of affordables from 60 to 150?
I don't think we should ever do that again.
Ever change it again?
No, I don't think we should ever allow an applicant to come in and pull a fast one like that. That was.
I think that this is a unique project, and I'm not as distrustful. I agree with you about the flipping. That bugged me.
Yeah,
But
no, I think we got a lot out of them for
yeah,
for a small
yeah.
project.
That's the only reason why I wasn't.
Anna, you got a lot out of them. I mean, it doesn't seem economic to me what they're doing, but
At all.
yeah.
I don't know how he can pull it off at 50%, 40% even. Like that just seems.
Yeah.
But Anna, are you saying to not include a 150 AMI in a definition of affordable? Is that what you're getting at?
Well, I wanted to ask you all what you think about that, given our discussion this evening, because I really don't want us to run into the situation where we're butting heads with trying to get more of that 60 and 80%. And with that data that I mentioned earlier that the Affordable Housing Trust has, technically speaking, we should be shifting it down even further to 50%.
But Anna, you're talking about a for sale people in the income range that you're talking about are never going to be able to afford. They simply will not qualify.
That's true.
And so I can see separating out an apartment, like an apartment concept, and bringing the affordability down. But for purchase, it's and I know from my 40B years is that we had residents come to the Board of Appeals and say, look, the people in the affordable units aren't doing their weight. They're not maintaining their houses. They're not doing this. They're not doing that. And what can we do? We can't do anything.
Yes.
So I don't think to put a senior who is on limited income into a for sale unit, I just don't think that's what we should be going for.
Well, the one thing that I was thinking about related to for sale, because I would agree that a lot of the situation could be accomplished through rental units.
Yes.
But there are also other alternatives, which I've watched on the marketplace here in Littleton as well, where there are manufactured homes that are for sale for like $68,000 to $80,000.
Yeah.
And so again, a senior could potentially afford that.
Yeah.
And is that something that could be brought into?
Or does the Affordable Housing Trust buy some and then rent them out at an affordable rate? I mean,
yeah. So I brought that up just simply as a topic to see whether or not any of you are interested in having that discussion to changing the numbers. And if not, then I'm fine leaving them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I say we leave them for now, but then like once we have the bigger plan.
But I mean, I agree with you. Yes, the 150 are not as meaningful as the 60 and 80s. That's true. So
Talking.
right.
All righty. Well, thank you all for having this conversation. And
right, so
Mark, do you need anything else from us on that?
I think we're good for right now. We just have to decide if we're having one meeting or two. That's all. Two. Myron, Delisa, one or two. We need one. Delisa, I'm going to be the.
I don't care.
All right.
I really
3,
don't.
2, you win.
All right, one meeting.
One meeting.
Okay.
Okay, but if we have one meeting, let's really stay on task.
We'll be on. Well, Anna won't be able to talk, so we'll be quick.
Hey,
Yes. Insta mute. All right.
Mark, what would you do without me? Come on.
I know. I'm having too much. I might
Who would actually read the
having
decision?
too much
All
fun.
right, so what day? What
All
day?
right, thank you all.
The
Stay
10th.
safe.
And
I'll entertain a motion to dissolve this meeting.
Okay,
so
but
moved.
Mark, what time on the 10th?
What, 6:30?
Okay.
Can we do it at 6?
6.
6? I don't care.
Fine with 6. Maren, I'm sure, that way you can go right from work, right, into more work.
I never
Yeah.
leave.
So 6 o'clock. We'll start at 6 on the 10th. Okay. Great. Thank you all.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
8 o'clock. These quick meetings. I love it.